Hello, chat. It is the new year. If you haven't watched these before, or maybe you've accidentally watched these because I have accidentally spammed the main timeline, welcome to the YapWan podcast for 2026. I've been doing these for a while now. If you take a look at the podcast section of the channel, you will see that there's a bunch of episodes. So if you are interested in me talking about cover year stuff, everything from the data science, tech side of my world to the baseball side, then you might enjoy these pods. I try to keep them around 30 minutes. Sometimes they bleed a little, and that is definitely my fault, but the questions that I read, they're all from y'all, so if you do enjoy the responses, or if you want more depth or clarity in terms of any of the questions, feel free to put comments below. But also, the Discord, there is a Discord. Since this is one of the public ones, please put or please check out the link below, and you can join the Discord and you can ask questions in the YapWan Questions channel. So, and for those who have been watching over the last several months, almost half year now, I think, since we've started, thanks for all the questions and support and everything over 25. It's been a fun year. I sent a post out saying 25 was honestly one of my favorite years in terms of content and development, professionally and personally. Lots of big pluses. So some of that was this. Of course, if you know me from streaming world, I have retired from streaming. But in lieu of streaming, there is this pod. The Discord's still very lively. So not all is lost. But with that said, let's get to your questions. So there's if you watched last episode, there were a couple pretty juicy ones. I thought I was going to lead off with one. I'll lead off with a different one. And this one was about trying to identify people who could lead, or people with it factors. What is that? And what am I ultimately looking for when putting together a team for a project, or a team for a set of projects? So this is interesting because something deep down in me for a really long time has always thought I could always be that guy. I could always step into that role. And I never, very rarely in my life have I kind of tried to put myself in that position actively. Most of the time in my life, people had recognized it in me, or I've built towards it. So the idea of me discussing like what I would personally want in my growth, and that would lead towards like these projects that I thought would be really important, high risk projects, high risk, high reward projects, experimental projects, and then ultimately executing them and showcasing like, here are avenues of new research or different things that we could think about, or at least do to some rudimentary extent, that I think adds value to the department, the company, whatever. So, one thing that I always think about is back when I was at KFC, there was always this idea of like, how do we improve not just like decision-making and decision-making avenues, but how do we know that those avenues are going to be good, like projections-wise, predictive-wise. So there was always this, look chat, there's a barge going upstream. I'm sure it's on its way to somewhere really exotic. So I always thought that for projects at KFC, when I was showcasing like, here's a new projections model, here's stuff we could do with the data that we have, it was always pretty critically received in a more of a defensive way than anything. I feel like people were like, wait, so you're doing your job and you're working on this other stuff, but this other stuff, who's asking for it? Who thinks we're not good at this area? Who thinks these things need to be improved? And I said, well, I do. I'm new here. This new arm of data science in your company needs sort of a signature of some sort. And my bread and butter is predictive models and machine learning. So I think you need some of that because you don't have it. And while at times exciting and well received, most of the time it was not so well received. And so the fallout for when things weren't so well received was always like, please continue to do this. There would be a group of people who would say, continue to do this stuff. It's important for the company to get to this spot where we trust in machine learning and all of this other stuff that you're doing in this department. But maybe the people that we have currently aren't ready to be the shepherds or the champions of these kinds of tools or insights, which, of course, disappointing on one side. Like, I know I'm better than whatever we have currently. I know the things that we're doing are better. It was promising because while they might not be things that we're ready for today, there are people who are ready for it, and when ready, we want to use it. So there was never a, stop doing this, and more so of a silent encouragement, but you can't be too loud about it because you don't want to hurt other leaders' feelings. So I think about this because when it comes to like initiative, when it comes to like, what do you believe is most valuable? Like, what do you think will help your department, your team, your company? I tend to think like, well, given what you do, whatever you're best at, if you had full runway to pick the biggest project, what would it be? And what would the product look like at the end? And for me, it was like, all right, our projection system looks not good. What if I made it better? Seemed, in my opinion, low-hanging fruit, but for the company, it was a pretty big change. In baseball, there's tons of things like that, right? Like challenging everything from the way you put features into a particular model, to the underlying dependent variable. Like in the public space, the Stuff Plus world, a lot of people train models on called strike with, and then have the plus model side of it set at 100 with standard deviations every 10 units. So 110 would be one standard deviation above the mean, which, you know, that's the Fangraphs, Eno, and Max Bay flavor of Stuff Plus that's out there. There's also alternative flavors where people aren't necessarily using called strike with, rather they're using pitch level runs like a RE288 with some conditional data in order to suggest the actual run value, expected run value of a pitch. So whether you're choosing some sort of categorical variable, like what's the probability that this would end in a cold strike or with, or something more continuous, like what's the value of this on a infinite, negative infinity to positive infinity, really more like, call it -1 to +1. Maybe more like -3 point something to +3 point something. I can't recall the absolutes there for this scale, but regardless of what you're thinking, challenging the notion that however you're doing it, and then coming up with some design to do it correctly or do it in an updated way, is always the first step towards identifying who might be, at least easily identifying who could be some sort of lead or some sort of person with an it factor. Because a person who keeps kind of the goals of the department and the company in mind tend to be the people who float to the top of this, like, thought leader cliche. But I think maybe the question is less about how to identify it from like an objective, very clear and explicit way, maybe more of a implicit way. And again, I think about like times where I was elected to lead, or times where I didn't necessarily, you know, put my vote out for myself, but people did on my behalf. And I think the number one thing that's most important when it comes to picking people with it factors, which is so subjective, right? People who should lead is a subjective construct. But if people are to be given a chance to lead, if you're going to give a probability to everyone in a group for a particular project, my thought would be, which of these people are going to be able to bridge the gap of communication? And almost always, at least in my experience, people who have been able to communicate the methods as well as the results, the people who I thought from the start was going to do that best, have almost always been the best leads for the project. And sometimes you don't know exactly who that person's going to be. And when you don't know, you put several of those people together on the same project, and usually someone will stand out from the others when it comes to communicating either one part of it or all of it, or maybe bits and pieces for certain stakeholders. So I think of it that way. I don't necessarily think of it as like, oh, like, is there this secret sauce that someone has that everyone should really be like trying to hone, and now we're all working at dog shelters to like cultivate this one unique gem of a skill? Like, No, it doesn't have to be that way. In my opinion, it's clarity of communication. And it seems kind of, I don't know, cliche or stereotypical. And maybe not everyone has that. And it's true. I've worked with many great, smart, technical people who I trust with great, technical, smart things. And maybe they weren't always the best person to be in front of the stakeholders. I can think of several people off the top of my head, and I'd love to work with them all the time. And I know where they would be suited best. And I think they would agree. But sometimes those ships have sailed. So yeah, when I think of who's going to be people who can lead in the future, or people who have these it factors, I think it starts more with like, who are the people who are going to communicate the information the best? So, okay, that was one. By the way, this is the ballpark. It is empty. It is also cold. It's, I think with wind chill right now, I'm sitting at about 28, 29 degrees Fahrenheit. So I do have several layers on, so it's okay, but I'm kind of happy that this is going to end in technically 15 minutes, even though I've only done one question and I wrote down 5. So starting off 2026 great. Next one. Someone asked about what are the, like, maybe they didn't mean to ask it this way, but someone asked, why are the decisions in sports front offices in practice so different from the theory? So I don't exactly know where this came from in terms of like, was it a specific event? Is this just a general question someone wanted to ask or what? But I read it and I was like, man, usually people don't ask questions in this kind of way. It seemed like a frustrated question, but I could give my thoughts, I suppose. My biggest thought, God, I feel there's like, I don't know if it's like something like that's itchy in my shirt or something, and it's been like scratching at my neck all day. Anyway, sorry. Other things on my mind. I thought for when it comes to theory versus practice, the number one thing is theories are always great until you encounter something that wasn't in the script, right? Like if you think about chess, they're called opening moves, and they go out to anywhere from, 5 moves ahead to 20 moves ahead, depending on how complex or how many different variants or how many different iterations you've seen of a particular opening. And they call them opening moves because they tend to be the thing that gets you into the middle of the game. And then you have the mid game, and then you have the end game. And I like this idea of theory being closer to opening moves than end game strategies. Because a lot of the time the end game is, while you've seen it many times in many different forms, and there is a logic around how to close a deal, how to finish something off, seeing the finish line, as some people might say. And we know what we need to do, or what a team needs to do to ultimately get a deal done, or make a move, or some sort of transaction or some sort of like, whether it's a contract, whether it's a trade, whether it's a call up, whatever it might be, right? We know what the end game should be, right? Like if we want to do this, these are the things you need to do per the rule book to do this, right? The opening moves tend to be like the theory as to how or why, right? At least that's how I like to think about it. And that could be a very small move, like, hey, we should call up this team or check in on this agency or check in on XYZ, right? To see what the status or the state of, let's just say, a player. But it could be a major league player, it could be a minor league player, whatever is being discussed. And that first move, right, could be very simple. Just calling, just checking in. But the complexity of something that could be many moves ahead starts to get obfuscated or obscured by other moving parts, because it's not actually chess where you're playing against one other person and you have a set, you have a set of moves that you would respond with given this one team's response, with this one person's response. You have 29 other teams plus more than several, but many different agencies who all can do the same things, or at least very similar things. And sometimes that's very similar. You might have competing offers between different agencies or teams. And sometimes they're very different. Certain moves will allow you to do other things, right? So when you think about it in that way, that opening move, that theory of what you should do, is pretty ingrained and hairy in the entire ecosystem of moves you could do. And in a different game, I suppose, it's a little less like chess. It's more like Jenga, right? Either you do something that's very successful, but it can lead to a different set of decisions by the time your turn comes back to you, or it's a move that's disastrous, right? And it doesn't allow you to do anything else because you've now toppled your tower, right? So I tend to think of it a little more high risk in the sense of like one move can really set off a chain of reactions, or one decision can set off a chain of reactions that you may be aware of. But there's so much of that middle game that you might be unaware of that might affect the market in a different way that you didn't maybe foresee. And as much as I want to believe that every team out there, you could think or simulate through what their decision-making process could be, or what it most likely is, sometimes a team might do something and it really does surprise the market, so to speak. So when I think about theory versus practice, I tend to think of, the other way to think about it is like, in a vacuum, a lot of things make sense, right? A lot of people like to think, hey, if they do X, Y, and Z, then this team's going to be better. In a vacuum. Like, okay, true. Right. Like, if, the Warriors acquire LeBron, I bet that team is better. Probably Steph LeBron seems like something that could work well together, right? So, in theory, why don't the Warriors try? And the Warriors try to do that. And of course, everyone will say, well, that's easy because of the money. That's easy because of, LeBron doesn't want to be second to Steph. You could say all sorts of different things. But aren't those other things, right? The things that make the, in a vacuum, logical things less logical? Because when we think about things so ardently true, then something has to be ardently false to compensate, right? Like, it is true that if LeBron James and Steph Curry were on the same team, that'd probably be the best team, or at least one of the best teams in the NBA. However, on the other side, the things that don't allow for that clearly make this exercise, this thought experiment of what that could be, the value of Steph and LeBron on the same team, not possible. And so I always think about theory and practice in the idea of like how much more, or how much less information is any particular person using theory applying in their exercise. And most of the time, while many people probably would agree, like, oh yes, this person is doing this thing, it's so logical, it's so rational, okay. But they also went through all of these other, scenarios and situations where these decisions also made sense, right? So in a situation where everyone's like, oh, this is just like a move that they made before, this is just like a thing that they need to do, well, it might have made sense historically, might have made sense because of some sort of precedence, but a lot of the time people are working with a lot less information than what a typical fan knows. And truly, people in a front office, which are many, not everyone has access to the same information either. So even internally, you'll have people who try to use their most critical, most rational thoughts to produce evidence-based decision-making, but they might not be working with all of the information that the top of an organization might have. So, and that varies from team to team, right? Some teams give more access to more people, but maybe not all access, right? There's some things that people will just not have access to, like medical information, right? Like very few people have access to that, and that's a very large factor, right? So, or on the player side, a player also has their own preferences, right? Like we've heard, at least in the NBA, players actively saying like they want to be, at least I grew up in the Bay, so a lot of the time people were like, oh, I want to join that Warriors team, not just because they're good, but because they're interested in getting into investment opportunities in the Bay Area. And being local to the Bay Area for half the year allows them to make investment connections. And it's the same with LA. People want to be in LA because they want to be a part of the entertainment industry or the tech industry in LA. So there are these attractors, these other things that players might be thinking of as well that, the public might not know, right? The public might not know that Kevin Durant, when he joined the Warriors, he was interested in also being close to the Bay Area in terms of investment opportunities. And that's all public information. That's all out there. But to think about that as part of the factor, part of the reasoning why someone so high profile would join a team. It makes you think like, well, Kevin Durant isn't the only multimillionaire in the NBA. How many other players are thinking about it in this way? Probably a lot. Right? Players, they don't just want to play for winners. They don't just want to play with their friends. They don't just want to play in cool places to live. But they also want to play in places that are good career moves beyond the world of baseball. Beyond the world of sport. And so, and that could be anything from financial reasons, career reasons, family reasons, all sorts of different reasons. So these are the kinds of things that also distort the rationality or the logic of what a team in theory should do, right? Because it goes the other way as well. It's what a player in theory should do. So sometimes the reason why theory and practice doesn't, or theory and real life doesn't go accordingly, isn't the same thing. It's usually because in real life or in theory, one of these aspects are including fewer variables. And sometimes that is in real life. Sometimes in real life, people aren't considering more than, several sides of the coin. And at times, the real life application of a decision incorporates so many more sides to a decision that the public would never know about. Sometimes those things tamper or distort how a decision ends up getting made. So yeah, I would say the difference between theory and practice, for those who notice it or recognize it, sometimes you just have to be happy with the answer. At least in sport, you just have to be happy with the answer that the decision was made, and it's going to be fun. So at least that's what sport should be. So, okay, we're at 30 minutes and I got through 2. All right, I will do one more, since this is the first public facing one. I'm going to try to do these ones that get put on the main feed maybe once a month. But if you're interested in these pods, subscribe to the channel and check out, I don't know if you could set alerts for podcast stuff, but check out Yapland Podcast in the podcast section. And if that is possible, good. I'm trying to do these at least once a week, and depending on the week, sometimes they come out like daily. But at the very least, I try to do this once a week, and these on the main channel, main feed will be out hopefully once a month. So in this nice, widescreen gimbal version. All the other ones, as you'll see, are like vertical and very low effort. But once a month, I'll try to make them a little higher effort. So other pods I do listen. Someone asked, what are other pod recommendations? I actually don't listen to a lot of podcasts. In fact, I listen to 0 podcasts, which is a lie because I only listen to one. And that is the Teamfight Tactics Senior Game Designer, Developer, Director. That's Riot Mort Dog's channel, which is what this podcast is actually based off of. So if you're interested in more general tech, but also very coded with not just video game design, but specifically the world of Teamfight Tactics, which is my favorite game, you could check out Mort Dog's channel. But I hope you continue checking this out. Hope you thought it was cool. And next time you see this, most likely will be in Arizona. So that's it for me, chat. Post questions down in the comments below, also in the Discord. And please subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. So I will catch y'all later.